To some people, this sound is nostalgic. No matter how old you are, it's very likely you'll feel nostalgic for a certain piece of music in a video game. In this video, I'll be counting down the top 10 songs in video games that make me very nostalgic, and remind me of simpler times when I wet the bed and wasn't judged. Please remember that this is just my opinion, and I'm sorry if you disagree, but that's what the comment section's for. It's not like anyone uses that thing properly anyway.
Number 10.
If you grew up with an N64, you grew up with Mario Party. If you grew up with a PS1, you grew up with Crash Bash. And if you grew up with both, well, I bet all the other kids in the playground just absolutely loved it! Crash Bash was the first game in the Crash Bandicoot series not to be developed by Naughty Dog, and naturally fans were panicking about the quality of the game because of that fact. Probably. I mean, I don't know, I was like 5 at the time. And you know what? Honestly, it wasn't that bad. Games such as Ballistics, it's funny because balls, Polar Push, Crate Crush, and especially Tank Wars were all incredibly fun minigames for both 1 or 2 players. There were a couple, however, that just weren't that fun. An example of one of these would be the Pogo Pandemonium minigames. For some reason, the music to El Pogo Loco still somehow manages to elicit a sense of nostalgia. Even though, rest assured, I thoroughly hated the minigame itself. Maybe the nostalgia just reminds me of all the difficulty and hatred I had for these levels. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I get a sense of nostalgia, because I'm reminded of all the difficulty that I faced. You know what, if you think you can do a better job with a script, then you can do it yourself!
Number 9.
Every so often, a game comes along that, years into the future, will make those who played it just say, hey, do you remember that level from that one game that went na 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 na? You know that one memorable song perhaps in a game filled with songs that just weren't that memorable? For me, Colossus from Spyro 2 was that song. The rest of the songs are great, but everyone remembers that chanting. Oh, that chanting. Combined with being one of the first levels you play in the game, hearing the theme for this level just brings back an incredible amount of nostalgia. And did I mention this level let you play ice hockey? Imagine my face as a 6-year-old boy when I first discovered I, a mere fire-breathing, purple, puny dragon, could play ice hockey. Admittedly, my teammate was dumber than sticks, but who am I to complain?
Number 8.
Two great things came out of the year 1995. One was obviously me, and the other was Rayman, truly one of the greatest 2D platformers of the PS1 era. Ubisoft shocked everyone when the sequel to Rayman was in the and this game was pretty darn good too. Great gameplay, tight controls, and more importantly, an incredible soundtrack. And then, suddenly, almost out of nowhere, I get to the level The Cave of Bad Dreams. More like the cave that gives Michael bad dreams for like a month. But that's not as catchy or relatable, so I forgive them on that.
Number 7.
A survival horror game where you traverse around a hotel owned by a psychopathic mouse trying to collect the lost souls of the guests that stay there and deliver them to death without being caught by the guests. I mean, what's not to love about Gregory Horror Show? Not much, really. This game is rated 12, but between you and me, I used to play this before I was 12. Yeah, I was a naughty little 11-year-old. The theme that plays in the basement is honestly one of the most memorable things about this game and my childhood. There weren't many enemies down in the basements, which allowed this piece of music to be a little less, hey, you could die at any moment, and a little bit more, hey, you're completely alone. Good luck! This theme is, in my opinion, the scariest in a bunch of scary themes, and it still reminds me of all the fun I had in the Gregory House basements.
Number 6.
Crash Bandicoot 2. The jetpack theme from Crash Bandicoot 2. In my opinion, those words alone should be enough to justify my choice, but let's get real here. I'm on the internet. Nothing I say will ever be able to justify any choice I ever make. While this theme may not be nostalgic for many based on the fact that it appears near the very end of the game, this theme always takes me back to when I was approaching the final boss, and this particular piece adds tension by changing the tempo and urgency of the music halfway through. You know, as epic as it is, I was already scared senseless by these pesky jetpack controls, so thanks for adding that. Yeah, really could have done without that, thanks. But praise be to Mr. Josh Mansell for creating one of the greatest video game tracks ever!
Number 5.
How many of you eat fast food? How many of you play video games? Oh, all of you. Well, I'm not sure what I expected. Well, certain restaurants gave out free demo discs when you ordered food from them. Seriously, they contain demo versions, usually 1 or 2 levels, from upcoming video games. This is where I first discovered games like Ape Escape, Roscoe McQueen, and Firebugs. Firebugs. A game where you could race on the walls and ceilings at high speed to the sound of the Finnish hip-hop group, the Bomb Funk MCs. Their song We Are Atomic will always remind me of the first time I played Firebugs on a McDonald's demo disc number 4. And thought, whoa, cars can do that? To which my driving instructor has since told me that they cannot. Or as he called it, an instant disqualification. I swear it was an accident. But my point still stands. Deep down, I truly believe that this game was the sole reason I became such a big fan of hip-hop artists from Finland. Pretty sure that's what it was. Die-hard fan. Not even lying, not even lying.
Number 4.
Now hold your criticisms, children. This was the first game I ever played. Ever. According to the Guinness World Records Gamers Edition 2014, that I paid £20 to get shipped over from Canada for this one scene, and I'm therefore giving as much screen time as possible to get my money's worth, Crash Team Racing is the most critically acclaimed kart racing game of all time. The characters were fun, the tracks were creative and interesting, and the music created by the incredible Mr. Josh Mansell. One level in particular was just so memorably difficult that every time I hear the theme from it, I just get reminded of all the rages little 5-year-old Michael had. Hot Air Skyway. How annoying was it when you spun out on the spiral section, or failed to make the shortcut? With so many memories attributed to this upbeat and jolly track, I just had to include it on the list. But it isn't higher than number 4.
Number 3.
Did I say Rayman 1 was a great game earlier? Let me rephrase that.
This game was so incredibly difficult that it made me want to kill myself!
The music in this game is incredibly catchy and memorable. But the harmony music from the Bandlands world, what an incredible piece of music. And it would play over and over and over again to remind me that I could never get past this world. And I'm not trying to blow my own horn here. You get it? Because there's horns in this level. Oh, snap. And believe me when I say this, I honestly wasn't too bad at this game. The game was just that difficult. When you're that young though, you're not bothered about difficulty. Games were just fun to you. That's why, despite being impossible to complete at that age and this age, Bandlands still reminds me of all the pure fun and enjoyment I had trying and failing to complete Rayman.
Number 2.
The humble Game Boy. Not the Game Boy Advance, not the Game Boy SP, not the Nintendo DS, not the Xbox 3. I'm talking about the Game Boy. The first one. Not even the Game Boy Color, just the plain old Game Boy. The first handheld console I ever used. Back when I was 5, this thing blew my mind. It was also how I was introduced to the Mario franchise, more specifically Super Mario Land. When I talk to people about this game, I'm forced to describe it as the one with the exploding turtles, because that's seriously all anyone cared about in this game. Don't you lie to me. You only played this game to see those gosh darn turtles explode. I never completed this game, but back then I didn't care. It was just fun for me. And this music does actually remain as one of my favourite pieces of music from any video game ever. It had nothing to do with the exploding turtles. Nope, 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 nope.
And finally, number 1.
Rarely has a game made such an impact on me. Sonic Adventure 2 was the first game that I became, well, focused on completing. I'm not exactly sure why, because playing this game again recently, it's really not that great. 2/3 of the game are filled with boring emerald treasure hunting and the awful robot stages. But yet for some reason, I spent hours of my childhood trying to complete this game. And then I reached the final boss and heard the song Live and Learn for the first time. It was unlike any other track in any other game I'd ever heard before. And it made me feel like the long journey to get to the end of the game was justified by presenting me with this epic final boss. I mean, while some people may argue that Escape from the City is a better song, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But for me, this final boss song marks the several weeks I spent trying to complete this game. And after all, this is a list of the top 10 nostalgic songs. I mean, if I'd included the top 10 best songs, this would be a very different list. Josh Mansell, I love you!